Welcome back to the channel, boys. Fabloonski's coming at your neck with this no backup plans build. Now this is a returning exotic from D1. Honestly, I don't even remember how it worked in D1, but it is really good in D2. I really like the way it works. I went through the grind, I got it on a 1350 loss sector. I was like 1326, right now I'm 1325. Doing that 1350 loss sector, it was miserable, but I did it. I finally got this exotic, so let's go ahead and jump right in. So for this build, we're using Bubble Titan. Because of the way this exotic works, it actually synergizes with defensive strike. It only works with defensive strike, so defeating an enemy with this melee ability creates an overshield around you and nearby allies. Final blows grant melee energy when this overshield is active. So keep this in mind when I'm talking about this exotic, because this is what this exotic works off of. It works off defensive strike. As for my loadout, for your primary weapon or your kinetic, whatever you want it to be, you can use whatever you want. I'm using a Chroma Rush, we're using Feeding Frenzy Wellspring, but honestly you can use whatever because you're going to want to use a shotgun. It works with shotguns. Actually, I should probably talk about this exotic before I talk about my loadout. So the exotic perk on it is Force Multiplier. When you have full melee energy, Shotgun Final Blows activate your defensive strike and consume your melee energy. Shotgun Final Blows also give you melee energy. So as long as you're getting shotgun kills when your melee energy is full, you get a shotgun kill. It'll use defensive strikes. You get the overshield and the reload speed buff. I don't know if it says that, but you do get a reload speed buff. It does consume melee energy. And then once it's active, Shotgun Final Blows also give you melee energy. Now since I'm using a Wellspring shotgun, I get the melee energy from backup plans and I get the melee energy from Wellspring. It's a very nice synergy. I get a lot of melee energy, just honestly all my abilities, but just because I'm getting melee energy from no backup plans and Wellspring, I get it back very quickly. This is a lead from gold Wellspring roll. It's really good for this specific build. Obviously there's other better shotguns, but just because of the way we're trying to work with getting your melee back as much as possible, this is the shotgun we're going with. And then we're also using Crown Splitter. Now if you notice, both of these weapons are void because I do have some elemental well mods. So moving on to my stats, we got 33 mobility. I don't care about mobility ever. Now we have 91 resilience. I tried to make this 100 because the higher the resilience, the more damage the bubble can take before it breaks. That was an update that they had, and I think it was the most recent patch. So now the higher the resilience, the more damage bubble can take. Also, it governs how fast you get your barricade back. Right now I get it on a 17-second cooldown. Now we got 64 recovery. It's pretty good, but defensive strike is going to be active so much that I'm not really worried about it. Now we have 22 discipline. Again, I have Wellspring weapon and some elemental well mods, so I'm going to get my grenade back pretty frequently. Now we have 100 intellect. I want to be able to use my super a lot. Popping bubble is very good for anything really. So having 100 intellect means that there's going to be more bubbles, more buffs going out, more orbs of power for everybody. And we have 37 strength. This does not matter because honestly I'm going to get it back so much faster. So moving on to my helmet, the most important mod that we have on here is elemental armaments. Weapon takedowns with a damage type that match your subclass element have an escalating chance to spawn an elemental well. And for those that don't know how elemental wells work, picking up an elemental well grants energy to your ability with the lowest current energy. Picking up an elemental well whose element matches your subclass damage type grants energy to all your abilities. So you pick up an elemental well, if it doesn't match your subclass type, you just get ability energy for your lowest ability. If the elemental well does match your subclass energy type, you get ability energy for all your abilities. So since I'm using a void subclass, I'm going to be spawning void elemental wells. I pick up an elemental well, I get ability energy. It's a little bit, but I get ability energy for all my abilities. Weapon takedowns with a damage type that matches subclass element have an escalating chance to spawn an elemental well. Remember that I said that I'm using 2 void weapons? That's one of the reasons, because I want to be able to spawn as many elemental wells as possible. So using elemental armaments is just going to do that for me. So we already went over no backup plans, but whenever you have full melee energy, Shotgun Final Blows activate your defensive strike and consume your melee energy. Shotgun Final Blows also give you your melee energy. Now for the mods, the 2 important mods I'm using on this is Momentum Transfer. Cause damage with your grenade reduces your melee cooldown. Whenever I throw my grenade, just get some melee energy. This fits right into the fact that I'm trying to spam or get my melee back as much as possible so I can have defensive strike up as much as possible. Now we're also using Fonts of Might. Picking up an elemental well that matches your subclass energy type grants a temporary bonus to weapon damage of that same elemental type. Again, I'm using 2 void weapons and they just buffed this mod. Now it lasts 10 seconds. I don't know if they increase the actual damage you get, the damage buff you get. I think it's like maybe 20-25%. I don't know, but it's a damage buff, which is nice. So now it lasts 10 seconds. You pick up 1 void elemental well, you get a damage buff for all void weapons. It's phenomenal. Now onto my chest piece, and the most important mod we have on here is reactive pulse. While charged with light, when you take damage while surrounded by combatants, you emit a burst of damaging arc energy, consuming 1 stack of charged light. I do have the secondary perk active as well, which is gain a power for overshield while performing your finisher, but the main mod, or the main perk I should say, is the reason why we're using this mod. I'm going to be in the middle of the fight with a shotgun anyway, so whenever I become charged with light by getting multiple kills with the shotgun, if I take damage when I'm surrounded, then boom, they're going to take damage because there's going to be an arc pulse that emits from my body, and then they're going to take damage. They're going to get staggered a little bit. It's going to increase my survivability by being offensive, which it kind of fits in this build because everything else is so like get shotgun kills, you activate defensive strike. Once I become charged with light, now it's going to kind of be like a pulse of arc energy, which is nice. Now on my legs, the most important mod we have here is quick charge. Become charged with light by rapidly defeating multiple combatants with fusion rifles or shotguns. Now we have that secondary perk active as well, which greatly increases the ready speed of fusion rifles, shotguns, submachine guns, and swords. So as long as I'm getting kills with my shotgun, which I'm going to be doing anyway so I can proc defensive strike with no backup plans, I'm going to be in charge of light, which is going to allow me to use reactive pulse. And onto my Titan mark, we're using 2 really important mods here. Well, I guess I should say 3 technically, but this is a double stack of 1 mod. We're using a double stack of outreach, reduce melee cooldown when using your class ability. So whenever I do end up proccing defensive strike with using no backup plans, getting the shotgun kills, I can pop my barricade and get a nice little chunk of melee energy, which feeds into that melee ability spam, which I'm trying to do with this build. And we're also using elemental ordnance. Defeating a combatant with a grenade spawns an elemental well that matches your subclass energy type. So again, I get grenade kills, spawn those void elemental wells, I pick those up, I proc Fonts of Might, which is going to give me a nice little I guess damage buff for all void weapons, and then also gives me some ability energy for all my abilities. And onto my Titan fashion, since like no backup plans really stand out and they're kind of like sleek and slender looking, I kind of went with like a tactical look. I don't like the bulky Titan look anyway, so if you guys want to see all my ornaments and my shaders, here it is. You can just take a screenshot or pause it really quick, take a look, and if you like this fashion, now you can recreate it. My first thought when using this exotic was, would this be viable in endgame content? And I think it might. Bubble Titan is really good at creating overshields, and the bubble itself is really good at protecting your teammates. But when it comes to endgame content, it's kind of hard to get a melee kill to proc defensive strike. Now with this exotic, it allows you just to get a shotgun kill. Granted, using shotguns in some of the hard content like GMs isn't too much of a great idea. I mean, there's some really good like slug shotguns, first and last out, you can get away with using, but it's a little bit dangerous. If you're in a situation where you're in a tight room and you have a shotgun, then yes, this thing will be phenomenal because you don't really have to get the melee kill, you just get the shotgun kill. If your teammates are near you, then they get the buffs that defensive strike grants them. And I think this will scale really well. Now the thing is, you'd have to give up using something like Helm of Saint 14, which is a top tier option, and there's some other great options for Bubble Titan and just for Titan as well. So would this compete? I think it does, because you're also generating melee energy just from getting shotgun kills. So it's not only just proccing it, you're getting melee energy, which then feeds into giving your teammates constant overshield, which will keep them alive, allow them to take some more damage before they start losing their health in endgame content, because the last thing you want to do in endgame content is die. And this exotic allows you to prevent that as much as possible. Now, as far as just some of the fun content like the new activity or lost sectors or whatever you want to do, override, yes, this thing is great. My main problem is that I'm constantly looking and fighting my teammates to find enemies to kill. I do not like 6-player match-made activities. Of course, raids and stuff like that are different. But when it comes to just a seasonal activity, I wish that they would just leave it at 3 players per activity. I don't like having to run around to fight my teammates or rush around to try and find enemies to kill to get my build working. That is my main issue with 6-player activities. I'm gonna make a video about this because it's really bothering me. My favorite activity so far has been Battlegrounds, because there's 3 players, and because there's 3 players, there's more enemies. You don't have to try and fight your teammates to have fun. There's just so many enemies coming at you because there's only 3 players. Now this activity is better. The new one, it's called like Astral Alignment, is better than Override in my opinion. Override was okay, but it was pretty simple. You just bank modes. At least this one has some kind of mechanics. There's objectives. So although that you don't really, like, the enemies are there, you're trying to complete the objectives, which is fun. I actually think this activity is pretty good for a six-player match-made activity. If this was 3 players, I honestly think it'd be a little better because it'd be more chaotic. You gotta strategize more, but people aren't really ready for that. They like the 6-player match-made activity, so it is what it is. I just wish that maybe there was an option. Maybe there was a heroic mode which you could queue up with however many players you wanted. That'd be really fun. I hope that, I doubt it will come later on in the season, but if it did, that'd be fantastic, because then some of these crazy builds you make would actually matter. Right now they don't. You're just running around. I'm like trying to rush to find enemies to kill, and it's just not a good feeling. I really don't like it. But this build is phenomenal, guys. You guys got to get this exotic. I did the 1350 Lost Sector, which is really hard. I recommend waiting until it's just a legend version of the Lost Sector, so it's easier and it's dropping arms. You can have a much better time. It took me like 30 minutes per run, like 24 to 30 minutes per run, and I had to do it a couple times before I got it to drop. So definitely do it. The Warlock has some gauntlets, and then the Hunter has some boots. I'm going to try and get all of those, so if you stay on the lookout for that. But if you guys like this content, please like, subscribe, and share. It truly helps me out a lot. You can also check out my other videos. Links are in the description below. I have a lot of crazy builds, so go and check that out. And you might as well follow my social media. I have a Twitter and an Instagram, both at @fan_balloonskis. But with all that being said, deuces.